Hey, this is Eric from Catching Light.
Hey, this is Hemp.
Hey, this is Glenn.
Hi, I'm Steve-O.
Hey, this is Drew Hines with Hindsight Imagery.
This is Matt Callahan at Digimatty Photographic Services.
Hey, this is Jason, and welcome to Tales from the Pit. Hello and welcome to Tales from the Pit, the behind-the-lens access to the entertainment world and the creative people involved. Today, we are talking with photographer Matt Kennedy. Matt, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great. I'm really excited to talk to you. So, Matt, you have some really cool stuff you've been working on, and we'll get to that. But if you don't mind, can you give us sort of a background of how you got involved into the photography realm and then into your industry?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. I mean, my mom was a hobbyist photographer, so she was really into portraits and landscape photography. So we always had a camera around the house, as long as I can remember from being a little kid. And I didn't actually pick up a camera probably till middle school. I was an avid skateboarder, surfer. I think there was a moment when I realized that I was never going to turn pro. So the next best thing was taking photos of all my friends, and I still skated, but it got me out there doing something different. And that's kind of where my love for photography, took off from. And
where'd you grow up? What area?
Primarily Southern California.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, cool. I did a little bit of traveling here and there, but Southern California is home. I'm from here, spent most of my time here. So, yeah.
So that was your sort of brief intro to your childhood. What pushed you into, from there? Did you go to school? What was your next steps?
Well, I mean, it's a bit of a sad story. I lost my mom. My mom passed away when I was about 19. So that desire to kind of pursue photography was in the back of my mind. It wasn't really in the forefront at the time. I was a young kid, So I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but through some family introductions, I met a second cousin who is an assistant cameraman, camera operator in the industry. And so we just kind of started chatting. And oddly enough, I had met another guy who's a visual effects supervisor, completely different meetings. And it just kind of stoked my interest. I went to work one day with my second cousin to watch him film. I think it was a sitcom. He did a lot of sitcoms. So it might've been like, Everybody Loves Raymond or Just Shoot Me, one of those shows. And at the end of the day, I was like, you get paid to do this? I couldn't believe it. It looked like so much fun. So my introduction into the film industry was actually as an assistant cameraman on 35 millimeter film. And that was kind of my love for photography basically is what made me curious to learn about bigger, better cameras. And so what better camera system, than motion picture cameras. So that was pretty much how I got into the industry, loading film, 16 millimeter, 35 millimeter, Vista Vision, which is special effects, large format cameras, things like that. And then I worked as an assistant on television and movies for almost about 12 years. But through that period is when I was first introduced to the unit photographer. So there's always one photographer on every film. So I befriended some of those guys, and I just kind of hit a point in my life where I was like, I'm more of a creative person than just a technical person. And an assistant cameraman it's really technical, and you're not really, satisfying those creative outlets, even though you're surrounded by it. So that's kind of when I, changed course and looked into the unit photography. And that's kind of in a nutshell. So
sure.
And the rest is history. So
yeah. Did you have, going back to when you first started working as the, assistant camera or whatever on the sitcom stuff, did you have training on that, or was it like on the fly?
Yeah, so I never actually got into the sitcoms, and my cousin never actually got me a job. He showed me how to load film because in those days, there's magazines that go on the cameras. So that was one person's job, was to load the magazines, unload them, can them, send them to the lab. And I would go do that on the weekends when I wasn't working a 9 to 5.
Yep.
And then I would volunteer on student films. And then I slowly started to do it on like non-union, low budget stuff. And it was pretty much like on the job training. You know, once you got the gist of it, there's so much that you can't learn. I mean, I would go to rental houses and practice on all the camera systems, you know, on my own time. And then slowly you start to get hired, you know, by people, and you just kind of learn as you go. I mean, it's better than any film school, you know, boots on the ground set experience. So, and that's kind of how I did it. So
what was your like first official, like, all right, I'm getting paid for this type of gig?
Oh man, that's a good question. I mean, I got it. So it would be a union job because, you know, we all have to be in the union to work on studio projects.
Yep.
And I mean, that was like in 97 or 98. You might've stumped me there. I don't know if I can remember my first union job, but it was pretty incredible to look at that paycheck compared to like the non-union world, you know, in the 90s, at least, you know, I'm sure it's similar today as well. But I did load some visual effects cameras on this movie called Message in a Bottle. That was kind of one of the bigger studio things. And it was just for a visual effects unit. My friend was the supervisor, and our job was to basically go shoot like weather plates. And I don't know if you saw that. It's Kevin Costner, like he's on a sailboat and he's in these stormy seas. So we would shoot smoke passes against black. And then we would shoot vertical rain, horizontal rain, upside down rain. I mean, we'd do all these elements, and then they comped them into the final film. So that was kind of my first studio gig, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's cool.
I thought it was cool at the time.
Yeah, totally. And you know, I do film. I'm doing it on a, you know, low to no budget. So you know, it's very addictive once you get into that industry and you start doing a lot of that stuff.
Sure.
You know, in all the different, you know, areas of it, it's very, very addictive. So I can certainly see that once you get your toe in there, you're like, man, I want to keep going in this direction.
And it was really, I mean, as a young guy in his 20s, you know, it's pretty eye-opening. I think prior to that, I don't think a lot of people thought you could actually make a career in creative fields like that. I know the industry existed and it had for a really long time, but it was such a tight-knit group. Like it was never on my radar. You know, I mean, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a stunt man just because I like jumping off of stuff, you know, like any other kid, you know, your bike, your skateboard or whatever. But I never thought that you could actually make a living. So I think when my eyes were open to that really just kind of changed everything.
Yep. Yeah. What was, you know, before we get too close into the newer stuff, but what was your influences back then and stuff like that? I mean, were you like focused on, you know, everyone sees Star Wars or something like that? Was there anything that really kind of drove you? I
mean, I think it's probably cliche, but yeah, Star Wars had a huge influence on me. I mean, I'm a kind of a closet Star Wars nerd. Yeah, so at least the first one, you know, and I mean, just blown away. And it still holds up today, you know. Yeah. It's just, I think that really just as a kid opened my eyes to the movies. And then when you start to learn about how they're made, you know, some people say it like spoils the magic, but to me, it's just kind of like pretty amazing to see the whole process.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly does change your perspective on films when you're watching films. I remember the first time I was hired as an audio guy, a boom operator for a, you know, feature film that was a low budget, whatever. And, you know, it was my first official job and I'm behind the scenes, you know, holding the mic, doing the shots. And I'm like, this changes the whole way I look at the movie from now on. I will never, ever be able to see a movie without seeing the wide mass of people behind the camera doing this stuff. So it just changed everything from then on out.
It really does. And I was actually talking with a friend about this the other day. I can usually only watch movies that I've worked on one time. You know, I just want to see what the finished product is, you know, because you were there for everything. And like you said, you know, the audience sees this, you know, and we see this. So if it's done really well and it's a good film, I don't think about that too much when I'm watching it. But most of the time you can remember where you were, what you were doing, what was happening around you, you know, how many takes we had to do, and, you know, reflections. I mean, there's so much going on, you know, so yeah, I can usually only watch them once.
Yeah. And the other thing is, you know, it's probably a year or two before you actually can watch it.
Yeah. Oh,
depending on what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I may have done, a couple other films since then by the time it comes out.
Right.
So you kind of forget sometimes. You forget what it was like.
When you were going through in your younger days, did you have your own camera or anything like that? I mean, you said there was a camera in the house already. Yeah.
I mean, I still have my mom's Minolta. It's like an XG1, I think, something like that. I should really know the model number, but it was in the 70s. I always had film cameras laying around.
Yeah.
And then when digital came out, I think the first digital camera I got was like a Canon 30D. I mean, it's horrible. I just found one of the cards the other day. It was like 2 gig card or something. Like, what the hell are you going to do with this?
No kidding.
It's pretty incredible just how fast, everything has changed. But I always had a camera around, and I would shoot here and there, same kind of stuff, surfing, skating, if it fancied me, but it just never on set, not when I was an assistant, that's a big no-no. So, but yeah.
So let's go down that road. So now you're, working on set as a camera assistant and stuff like that. What is that job? What was the daily duties of some of those jobs you had?
I mean, like I said before, I was a film loader for a long time, at least 4 or 5 years. So basically just kind of taking care of all the unexposed and exposed film. You're kind of doing a lot of administrative stuff for the camera department. Helping out on set whenever you could. And then, I moved up to a second assistant, which is basically, there's a first and second assistant on each camera. And so you kind of help maintain that camera. You make sure that the focus puller has everything that he needs. The operator has everything that they need. The cinematographer's taken care of on every front. You're kind of managing and running the set for the camera department, depending on your guys. Some first assistants will run it. Some of them like the second assistant to run it. It just, it really depends on like how old school the guys were, or like they're, as silly as it sounds, like how long they've been doing it. Some of the guys just wanted to concentrate on focus, pulling focus, when they let the second kind of do everything else. But I mean, there's a lot of things, marking actors, more administrative stuff, keeping track of gear, ordering gear, sending gear back, keeping everything clear and operating right, maintaining the camera truck. I mean, it's pretty, it's just like a technical job, it's very crucial, but not as exciting as it may sound. And I get to see a lot of cool stuff though, but yeah. Yeah.
And I'm assuming, but sometimes you're probably on location in certain areas and all that stuff, or are you shooting mostly on a back lot or something like that?
Yeah. It depends on the job. Yeah. Everything. I mean, I think back in the 90s, certainly a lot more stuff was shot in LA. So, we have a massive amount of sound stages here. So it used to be you go do a location movie, do a couple weeks on location, and then you do the stage work back in LA. And certainly that started to shift towards the end of the 90s and the 2000s, where, lots of states would have tax incentives. So, it'd be cheaper to shoot your whole movie in Louisiana or Georgia or wherever, Canada, so it just kind of, it really just depended on the project. If it was somewhere where they were using practical sets, then you would go on location, or even just on location in California, in Los Angeles. If it's a job where they needed to build specific sets, then obviously sound stages would be used for that. So it's kind of all over the place.
So you're doing assistant camera work and kind of a mismatch of a bunch of stuff related to that. And then it looks like at some point you became a second camera operator. Is that right? Or second unit or something like that?
No, I don't know. Are you looking at IMDb?
Yeah.
I don't know how they do. I don't know how they do that, but no, I was never an operator. Okay. I was a second assistant, and I did work as a first assistant a little bit. And then after that, I switched to still photography. So.
Nice. Yeah. So I'm looking at some of these. I mean, you've done so many cool things. Star Trek, second assistant camera, just Tenacious D, The Pick of Destiny.
Yeah, that's a funny movie.
How much work were you involved through the whole thing, or were you just certain parts of that?
So on Tenacious D, I was on the second unit. So, and second unit is basically where all the action takes place. So sometimes the key actors will come out, but there's a car chase in it. So we did a lot of the car chase. I think it's like a pizza delivery car or something, he steals it and it flips over and he goes down a manhole. So we did that whole sequence with the car kind of racing through downtown Long Beach here in California. And there might've been a couple other
sequences. But the biggest one for that movie was we did the car chase. Nice. Yeah. You've got so many credits onto your list here. So many cool things. Italian Jobs, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I'm just kind of looking through a bunch here of your second assistant camera stuff. I was just kind of looking at that before we start talking about stills. And any of those as before we talk about stills, any of those sort of stand out to you as like this was the dream set to be on or anything like that?
Oh man, I mean, Italian Job was really fun. I did the second unit on that one as well. So we basically did everything with the Mini Coopers. You know, we would have the cast would come down and do a couple things for close-ups, but we did all the stunt sequences. So the whole chase, you know, at the end of the movie with the Mini Coopers, we did that. I think we had 30 Mini Coopers, somewhere around that. And they were all kind of rigged differently. Some of them have side mounts for cameras, hood mounts, and we would just kind of leapfrog to different cars for different shots. We had minis that were completely electric, because the sequence where they go down into the metro tunnels, we actually drove them into the metro tunnel to the platform, but you can't have emissions underground in Los Angeles. Oh, right. So they had to make them electric. And even the BMW motorcycles were electric. So we had electric cars there. And then when they jumped the tracks, that was all built on a soundstage. In these old hangars where they used to build the space shuttle. They built these tunnels. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, but that was a really fun job. Star Trek with Jj Abrams, that one was really fun too. I'm not a Trekkie. Yeah. So it was a blast though. We had a good time.
But I love JJ's version of Star Trek. I mean, you sort of put a little of that Star Wars spice into it, you know?
That might have been it, you know? Yeah. Cause I was never a Star Trek fan before that. But yeah, he did bring something, maybe his homage to Lucas and Spielberg, that kind of, which he does in most of his films, you know?
Yep.
So yeah, it was definitely fun to be a part of and work on. So
yeah, that's awesome. And you were second assistant camera as well on that one, right?
On that one. Yeah. That was probably the last big movie I did as an assistant. Yeah. I think I did a couple more after, but
that's probably a huge one, right? Was that like the biggest production you were on at that time?
I don't know. I mean, big as far as budget or
amount of people and crew and all that stuff?
No, I mean, I did some other ones. I mean, Mr. and Mrs. Smith was pretty big. We did a second unit of that. Okay. That was pretty good. I did this really horrible movie called Poseidon. Sorry, Warner Brothers, but you know, it didn't.
I kind of like that one.
I mean, that one was really tough. That was really long, you know, and it was tough because it was all in the water. You know, it was a water movie. Those are never fun.
Oh, so yeah.
Logistically, with camera gear and electronics, it's just kind of a nightmare. You know, it was like 120 days in the water. So
is that long days? Or do you have like set hours? Because I know union stuff sort of kicks in and stuff like that, but you hear stories of long shoots.
Oh man, I've done so many long shoots that they don't care. I mean, it's really what production's needs are and how many days they've scheduled and you know what it takes to get it done. I mean, Poseidon was scheduled really well because I think everybody knew that it was going to be tough. You know, we would maybe do a couple setups a day. You know, it was just so big. You know, the sets were massive and you have water and electricity and just, you know, everybody wants to be safe. And I mean, we would shoot it with, you know, 5 or 6 cameras. So, which was pretty cool in itself because we would, you know, the sets were so big of the ship that we would have a camera here and then the actors would turn the corner and there'd be another camera. And that's kind of how we got our coverage for the day. But, you know, it's just water's like a completely another level of just,
a mess. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, but
that's awesome. I'm just gonna quickly glance through here. I mean, you've got so many cool things. And it looks like at some point, it looks like you start crossing over to still. You want to talk about that transition? What happens there?
Yeah, it's not easy, man. It's really tough because you're kind of, I think if you're going to change gears in any job position in the industry, especially if you've been doing one for a long time, it's really kind of hard to reestablish yourself. People know you as this, and now you want to be this, whether it's going in the camera department, whether it's going from an assistant to an operator, you know, everybody knows you as an assistant. So it's going to take you a while to cut your teeth and, you know, get some legs under you. And I didn't tell anybody for a while that I was doing it. Cause I a family and I still needed to work. And
Yep.
I'd seen it happen before where, oh, well, you're not an assistant anymore. You're a photographer. So we're going to stop calling you. And I didn't need that to happen like right away. So I kind of would do side hustle still work on non-union stuff. Even though I was in the union as an assistant, you know, I would stay with my core guys and work. And then I would go shoot stuff when I wasn't working with them. I would reach out to, you know, line producers and people that I'd worked with and said, hey, I'm crossing over. If your photographer ever needs a day off or, you know, you need props shot or something like that, you know, call me up. And then that slowly started to happen. You know, there were a couple producers that kind of like, oh yeah, we'll come out and do this for a day or two. And then you kind of get your name in front of the studios as a photographer. But it's a long process. I mean, it took me a couple of years until I would get any kind of regular calls.
When it comes to that decision, why did you go stills? Why was still photography the direction you wanted?
You know, I mean, I think like a lot of people, I wanted to be an operator, but just kind of the way the department is working nowadays, it's not like the old days. Like in the old days, you would start as a loader and then you would move up to second, and then your second had moved up to first, and then your first becomes an operator and you move up to his first, and then he becomes a DP and you move up to his operator. You know, that stopped a long time ago. Yeah. And I wasn't, and quite honestly too, I wasn't sure I wanted to stay in the film industry. You know, it's a grind and it's tough. And so I thought about getting out and doing like photography and action sports. Mm-hmm. And then I think by the time I figured it out, it was more of a young man's game. You know, they wanted like young kids that could travel with the athletes, you know, and I had kids by that point and I was like, I can't do that, especially for what they wanted to pay, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So then I kind of, you know, took a breath and said, you know what, I'm going to go after the unit photography, because I've always been fascinated with the position. I'm in the industry. I'm in the union. I have the contacts. I know I can do it. I've been in the camera department. I know how sets work. It just seemed like a no-brainer.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, you know, I reached out to a couple of guys that I had worked with that were unit photographers, and quite a few of them kind of shunned me, you know, because you're potential competition at some point.
Sure. Yeah.
And there were a couple that really helped and basically said, you know, if you get hired over me, it's because of your work, you know, and I kind of took that to heart, and I'm really good friends with both of them to this day. And, you know, and I had a couple tell me, you know, you don't want to do this job, you know, it's changing, you know, it's never going to be the same, you know, the old guys. Yep. And I had one of them actually tell me, he's like, I'm glad you didn't listen to me. So I don't know, man, I'm kind of just rambling, but yeah, it was tough. It took me probably at least 2.5, 3 years to get some credits where people would actually hire me as a photographer.
So, yeah. And you've got tons of stuff, and you started doing photography on sets, what, about 10 years ago, roughly, something like that?
Well, 2009. So
more than that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, because IMDb, you know, those credits, that's when they come out, not when we did them.
Oh,
so
right,
it could be 1 or 2 years prior to that. Yep. So yeah, 2009 is pretty much when I pulled the cord on the Sistine and just went full in on shooting.
So this whole time you're doing all this other stuff, you're continuing to expand your photography skill set and all that stuff all the way prior to this. So you're still doing photography regularly, right? During all the other stuff going, you doing the other work, or is it you just kind of came back to photography?
You mean while I was assisting, or?
Yeah.
You know, I didn't shoot that much when I was assisting. I mean, it's kind of life sucking, you know, no matter what you do in the industry, it takes everything. You're kind of all in, you know? Yep. So I didn't have a lot of time to shoot. I would pick up a camera once in a while. And even to this day shooting, I don't pick up a camera much when I'm not working. I kind of need a mental break from the camera. I don't know if that makes sense. Some people think I'm crazy. Like, oh, you don't do personal work. I'm like, if something speaks to me, then I will. Yep. But I need a break, man. I'm looking through that viewfinder 12 plus hours a day, you know, for I don't know how many months. I need that little rest period. So what was the first big still job you had? The first big one was probably Transformers 3.
Oh, nice.
I did a lot of like TV and smaller stuff prior to that. and there's a really great unit photographer named Robert Zuckerman, who was doing Transformers, and he was having some health issues. So I got a call from Paramount one day, and they asked if I could come in for a meeting. And I went, and they're like, "Can you come in now?" And I went down there, and they're like, "Hey, you know, we have a job that's pretty heavy on the action, and can you be on a plane to Chicago in like 3 days?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. What is it?" And then they said, "Oh, it's Transformers." And I basically got hired on that because of my surf and skate photography. Like, I think the vice president of marketing was like, "We need somebody that can shoot action, that can run around." And that's what they told me. I don't know. So
what was your duties during that job? I mean, are you focused on continuity, or are you just documenting behind the scenes sort of stuff, or what was?
Shoot everything that's happening. So, you know, a lot of people misunderstand a unit photographer as a behind the scenes photographer. I mean, that's just a fraction of what we shoot.
Right.
You know, we're hired, we go in to shoot everything. I mean, the best way I can describe it is like a photojournalist on a film set. So I'm covering behind the scenes, but I'm covering every scene that's shot, you know, all the production stills. I shoot props, you know, I'll shoot sets, plates of the sets, vehicles, whatever it is, shoot everything, you know, and because you never know how they're going to use it.
Yep.
So yeah, that's kind of Transformers. There were two of us. Like I said, Robert was the main photographer, and he would just say, you know, go down here and do this. And it was such a big movie. There was so much going on, and Michael Bay sets are insane to begin with.
Oh yeah.
So I was shooting a lot of the main stuff and kind of different angles than Robert would. And, you know, then he would call me some mornings and say, "I'm not coming in. You just do everything today." So, you know, kind of did that. And, but my first day on that movie, the publicist was like, "Hey, Michael wants to talk to you." I'm like, "Oh shit. Okay." You know, Michael Bay, it was a little kind of nerve wracking, you know? Yeah. And, he says, "I want you up on that rooftop. And like in an hour, these guys are going to base jump off this tower in those wing suits, and they're going to fly right by you. I need a shot of all of them."
Wow.
He's like, "You got one chance." I'm like, "Okay." So, you know, made my way up to the top of this building, and, you know, the behind the scenes cameraman was up there, the EPK shooter. So we talked a little bit, and then you hear on the radio, "Okay, they're jumping, here they come." And these guys just blasted right past us. And it was, I got the shot, and I got a couple of them, but I showed it to Michael and patted me on the back. He's like, "All right, kid." And that was it. You know, I was like, "Okay, here we go." So, but yeah, kind of, you know, thrown to the wolves right out of the gate.
Yeah, the big test right off the bat. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So
how long of so for that, we'll focus on that just for a minute. So
yeah,
you get called out there to Chicago. Were they already in the middle of filming, or was it the beginning of the process?
If I remember correctly, they had shot in LA a little bit. So that was their first day in Chicago when I got there. And I think I was in Chicago for about 6 weeks. And then they moved on to Detroit. And I didn't go to Detroit. I just did the Chicago portion. So then I came back home. Yeah. And then they continued on from like Detroit to Florida, a couple other places. So
you can be involved with something from start to end, or just certain sections of different stuff. Does it depend? It
depends. Yeah. For the most part, if I get hired for a film, sorry, my dogs are growling. If I get hired for a film, it's from start to finish, the photography. So, you know, and then sometimes depending on the film, you know, you'll get called out for a second unit, you know, where, okay, the actors are coming out. We need a photographer on second unit because the photographer's covering first unit where all the other actors are. So you'll do some stuff like that too. And sometimes, you know, we'll get stretches of additional photography for films. You know, they may have shot something in Europe and, it's coming to LA for a couple of weeks. So, you know, one of us will pick up the LA portion. It really depends. I mean, but for the most part, it's from start to finish of photography.
So if it's from start to finish, you know, are you involved only during the production part? Are you involved with any pre-production, like BTS stuff or anything like that? Or is it
mostly just production? So principal photography, but a lot of times, you know, I'll start like a week or two early. They'll do camera tests, and a lot of times they'll have the still guy come out and shoot the tests as well. You know, they want some stills as what the costumes or the makeup looks like.
Right.
And usually in those week or two of pre-production, I'll shoot any kind of like prop photos or set dressing photos. So if, you know, in the movie, there's family photos in the house that are going to be seen on screen and the actors are at the test, then I'll pull them aside and we'll do family portraits so that the art department can get those made to work on camera whenever they work. You know, school IDs, you know, passports, that kind of stuff. We'll do that. I mean, it could be in crime scene photos. It could be a lot of stuff that we'll do in pre-production. Yeah. And we'll do those through production as well, too, if they're needed. Because sometimes, you know, we'll need a military ID of an actor who's not in the whole movie. He's only working like 3 days. So before he starts, you know, we'll go do a day of portraits with him or something like that so that they can have those made.
That's cool. I mean, do they specify your camera gear? Or are you just kind of saying, all right, I probably want this tight shot or wide shot? Is anything specified for you? As
far as what I'm using, or
yeah.
No, I've heard rumors that Sony likes their photographers to use Sony gear.
I'm sure.
I haven't encountered that on Sony movies yet. But no, I think they just, at this level, they expect you to have good gear and know how to use it and know what lenses you need. You know, I've never had a studio say, you know, you need to have this many megapixels or this type of camera, you know.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, you know, because you're going to be, you know, Michael Bay's got this huge, gigantic set. Are you focused on the zoom? Are you focused? You got to be certain distance from stuff. Are you trying to do a wide? Or are you just bouncing around between different lenses?
It depends. It depends on what we're doing. I always have two cameras on me. I've usually got one with a wide zoom and a long zoom.
Yep.
You know, and if I have to change midstream during a take, it's easy. You can just, you know, pick one up and use it. I mean, I have a kit of really wide lens and tighter lenses and some primes and things like that. But the two workhorses are kind of like the 24-70 and the 70-200.
Same exact thing in the concert world.
Yeah, it's just, I know people are like, oh, why don't you shoot with primes? And I'm like, well, because I could have the most beautiful shot on a prime and at the last minute a boom or a flag comes in and I can't move my body. Yeah, I can't adjust to frame it out. So I need to, you know, loosen up or tighten up a couple mils to do that. Then, you know, I mean, the zooms are so good these days anyways. It's not like the old days when they were like a 4, 5, 6 or something, you know?
Yep.
So
what are you shooting on? You a Canon, Nikon?
Yeah, I'm a Canon guy. So R5s, R6s. So
nice.
I was always Canon. And then when mirrorless became a thing, you know, we didn't have to use sound blimps anymore. And Canon just, as far as I was concerned, they didn't have it together as far as mirrorless. I tested a couple, you know, the M's were no good. The R was no good. And not that they weren't good cameras, but the big thing on film sets is lighting nowadays. Like some films don't have any kind of light, you know, so they're, you know, when the Alexa's shooting a native 800 or they're at 1600, that just obliterates a still camera, you know, so you really need fast lenses and cameras that can hold up in low lighting. And the first round of mirrorless for Canon weren't doing it. So I actually had Fuji cameras in my kit. I had XH1s and XT2s. And then, finally, I got to test the R5 when it came out, and I was like, "Yeah, this is what I was waiting for." So
yeah, nice. Yeah, I jumped over. I was using the 5D Mark IV. I still use that daily. Yeah. But I jumped over to the Sony at the beginning of 2020, and because I just already had a bunch of lenses already, so I made that switch then. And yeah, they shoot so fast too. I mean, it's like, you know, 20 clicks per whatever the click thing is now. And it's so crazy. It's great.
So and most of my friends shoot Sony now, I think, as far as unit photographers. It's me and a couple other guys that do Canon. But it's like, what makes you happy, right? What you're comfortable with. I always look at it like Chevy versus Ford, you know, they're both great. It's, you know, just pick what you like to work with, you know, what you're used to. I honestly will say I didn't want to learn all the Sony menus. I didn't want to go through that. I looked at them and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, it might as well be in Japanese because there's so much to dive into it, where the R5s were essentially like a 5D, you know, there was not too much new to learn. And I like that. I'm 50. I like to simplify my life these days. You know, I don't want to, you know, where I can.
I will say the 5D is just perfectly set up. ergonomically and menu and button wise. It's just perfectly set up for me. I don't even have to think to jump around because I use that every day for my corporate shots and stuff like that. But Sony's for all of the live event stuff. And I got to think about where I need to go to make a dramatic change. If I need to change my, if I'm going to do a video or something like that, you got to dive through 30 menus that kind of don't make logical sense in some stuff. Sure. So Canon really has that down. Well,
and there's no rule of you can only shoot with one type of camera either.
Right,
I have friends that, they're Sony guys, but one is talking about buying a Nikon, I think is a Z9 or whatever's coming out. And he was a Canon shooter before that, and he had Fuji as well. So if you like cameras and you got the cash to, pony up for all the gear, go for it.
Yep. So Transformers, that's your big major shoot, and that's an amazing. I mean, there's so much stuff involved with that movie. A Michael Bay movie is just gigantic in general. So where do you go from there? What happens after that? So, well, actually, let me ask you.
I might have to pull up my IMDb because.
Well, let me ask you this. So, if you do a shoot like that, are you like pre-setting up because you don't know how long you're going to shoot, I assume, in some cases, or do you always have a good idea of, all right, I'm going to be shooting this for 3 months, so I need to plan out the next 3 months or something like that? How does that normally work?
Yeah, no, we always, every crew member, department head, whatever, you get a shooting schedule so that, we're going to shoot from, October 10th through December 23rd. So we know that's the duration of the project. Yes, it could change. Most cases nowadays, they go over a couple days or a couple weeks, really on the job, but it just depends. Yeah. But going into it, like how long of a shoot it is. And then, it kind of helps you if you're trying to line up the gig afterwards. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah.
So you go from Transformers back in, what year was that? It was like 10 years ago or something like that.
I think we shot it in 2009 or 2010.
Oh, was that? Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got so much work, so much crazy stuff. The Purge. Many crazy things. I
had a good run at Blumhouse. Yeah, we did a lot of crazy, like, scary movies and stuff. It was fun. Yeah.
And the Blumhouse model is, sort of low budget, but well written, sort of really pulls you in stuff. How is that for you? Was that any different at all from shooting anything else?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the Blumhouse thing was really funny because a good friend of mine, he was a camera assistant. We basically, our careers are parallel. Like we started in the industry around the same time. We knew each other and we did movies together. And we had a conversation. We were both doing the same movie. I was on the stunt unit. He was on the main unit. And I was like, I'm done. I'm going to go do set photography. And he's like, me too. And so I did it, and I kid you not, probably like less than a year later, he made the jump as well.
Yep.
And so, we were both just trying to shoot as much as we could, no matter what the budget was, because you have to get some content, portfolio built up before you can get onto big stuff. Because we were both feature assistants, so we wanted to be feature photographers. Anyway, so he got this Blumhouse connection. I don't know if he knew a producer over there, and so he started doing them. And then he calls me and he's like, look, man, they're cranking these things out like three at a time. And he's like, I can't do them all. Do you want to get in on it? And I was like, hell yeah. So he would do one and I would do the next one. And then he would do the next one. And then we would do them together, like in different places. And we just kind of, man, he probably did 15. I probably did like 10, and it was lower budget. So there's like these tier projects, obviously, which is like anything below 5 million.
Right.
And so Blum's business model is, usually shoot for like 20 or 30 days, usually in 1 or 2 locations. There's no trucks, there's no base camp, like everything's in, like if you're shooting in a house, then all the gear's in garages at all the houses next door, and that's kind of how you do it. And they were getting pretty good talent, good stories. They'd get solid cinematographers and production designers and things like that. And, the rates were horrible. They were low budget, but they were union rates. So we were getting our health care and our pension and all of that. But more importantly for us, we were both just like, we need the content, and so we were just doing them. And we had a good time doing them. And it was usually like one or two of the same line producers. And so, excuse me, they made really good, fair deals for us. So we did them as long as we could, and then pass the torch to somebody else,
Yep.
So
yeah, you got to kind of just, with the entertainment industry, you have no clue long term. So you got to kind of roll with it and do what you can to, make yourself build your body of work, as you said, but also build your name out there as well and get your connections and stuff. So absolutely.
Yeah. You got to put in your time.
Yeah. I'm just kind of looking through just so many things. The Kevin Hart What Now documentary. What was that like? What's your part in that?
So I didn't see it. Did you see it? I think it was a concert tour. Like it was a comedy tour. He did a concert somewhere.
He's got a couple things. I remember watching some. I don't remember which ones I watched.
Yeah. Well, so I do know they did one concert somewhere. I can't remember what city it was in. But then they hired a director who I'd worked with before, this guy named Tim Story, who's really great. And they wanted to do like the build up to the concert. So they did this whole riff on like the Equalizer and James Bond. And Kevin was like the secret agent. And it was like a 2-week job. It wasn't very long, maybe 3 weeks. I don't know. And so we shot, it was like a mini movie that led up to his concert. Yeah. So that's what we did, but it was great. I mean, it was, Tim Story is a great director. It was a killer. We had Halle Berry and Ed Helms, and we had like the bad guy from the Equalizer. I can't remember his name. It was just really fun. I think, what's his name was in it. There was a lot of people in it. Oh my gosh, what's the guy's name? I can't think of it. Anyways, had a great cast,
Yep. So, with that stuff, what's your workflow for that? So are you like having to turn that over immediately? Are you editing right away? Or is it like shoot and then once it's all done, go to work on that stuff?
It depends on the studio. Most of the time I will turn stuff in once a week. So we still use still photography labs. They're just digital labs now. Yeah. So instead of creating proof sheets and things like that, they archive everything in an online system that talent can look at, filmmakers can look at for the approval, kill process, all of that, and for the studio to have access to. So my workflow is basically shoot, dump everything on the hard drive for the day. When I have time, do a quick edit. And that just means, punting anything that's out of focus, or if I don't like the way it's framed, because, obviously you're going to go through the day. Everything's not just like a clutch shot. So you're going to weed out the things you don't want to turn in.
Sure.
Because chances are if you send something in you don't like, they're going to use it. That's just my experience. And that's kind of it as far as editing, and everything goes on a hard drive and the drive goes off to the lab. Marvel and Lucasfilm, they want everything as soon as you're done shooting it for the day. So they'll send somebody down, they'll watch you dump everything on a drive, that kind of thing. And then you'll turn it in, cause they don't want their content going anywhere other than to them. And they don't use the third-party labs like the other studios. They have their own in-house system. So everything's with them. So.
Yeah. I want to talk more about them in a second, but I want to learn more about you. Are you a Lightroom, Adobe? What is?
I have everything. I don't have everything. I have Lightroom, but I'm always almost in Photoshop. I don't know if it's just like the old school mentality. I'll take it through the raw reader and I'll look at it, and I'll select the ones I want to keep and the ones I don't want to keep, and that's kind of it.
Yep.
If the only editing as far as the look that I'll do is if we're doing something really different, if they have like interesting LUTs that they're creating on set, I'll get as close to the look as I can from the DIT or the cinematographer, and we'll talk about it.
Right.
And I'll create like JPEG examples for those raw files, and I'll send those to the studio and say, hey, this is kind of the look we're going for. But that's all I can do, because the studio, when they have the images, their wants and desires for marketing and publicity may be completely different than what the filmmakers want it to look like. And a lot of times the stills will look different from the actual film. because they go in and they do, color timing and things like that afterwards.
Right.
And I'm just trying to get them the sharpest, cleanest, properly exposed image that I can, and they're going to manipulate it however they want. So
you're not technically trying to match, they're shooting an ISO whatever, and
well, you just can't technically,
right?
If they're at a 1600 on their camera, their 1600 and my 1600 are completely different. Yep. More likely mine will be like 6 stops underexposed compared to what they're doing. Their sensors are so much bigger, and it's just so, I'll probably be at like 3200 or 4000 or something like that, Yep. And I mean, I've shot scenes at 10,000 ISO. I mean, it's just, sometimes you're like, oh my God, there's like no light, but you make it work. I'm up for a challenge. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of that translates to the live, I don't know if you've ever done a live concert or not. Have you ever shot any music stuff at all?
I've shot music stuff in films, not like an actual concert. So I am with you as far as like banding and just mixed light sources. And sometimes you get some really cool stuff, and sometimes you're just like, oh my God, like what is that? So yeah, I don't know if that's where you were going, but
yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I feel for you.
We're limited, we shoot for a specific venue, so we're limited based upon the artist, what the artist allows for the venue. So it's generally first 3 songs. So you get, first 3 songs and that's it. So you have no idea what what lighting's going to be, what movements, who's coming out in what position and all that stuff. So it's a lot of this. All right. You just hope and, for me, I'll just shoot as much as I can, as fast as I can, just because I don't, and I'll quickly dial things in and move around position wise. Sure. How many shots per day do you think you're taking?
I like to keep it around 300.
Yeah.
I guess for some people that aren't in the business, that seems like a lot, but I know photographers that shoot like way too much as far as I'm concerned. I really like to be selective in what I'm shooting. I don't need to shoot every single frame or setup that they're shooting. Usually what I'll do is I'll watch a rehearsal for each scene, figure out the lighting and the blocking and where everybody's at. And I will try to figure out what I think is the moment in that scene that would make the most interesting photograph, where some people just spray and pray through the entire take. Nobody wants to look through all that stuff. I don't want to look through it. The editors don't want to look through it. And for what reason, I mean, if it's not telling the story, then why do it? So I really try to pick and choose those moments. And that's kind of how I approach a scene. And, I'm trying to get stuff for the studio as well as the filmmakers, but I'm also trying to put my own take on it. So yeah, I'll shoot a take or 2 where the cameras are, but then I'll move around and I'll find like an off axis or another angle that they're not shooting, where the lighting's not good for their cameras. Because sometimes it's really interesting for mine. Yeah. I've had shots where it's not lit for me at all, but the way the shadows are falling on them just makes for more of an interesting image.
Yeah.
So I like doing that. I like kind of roaming around and doing my own thing. And then sometimes you just don't shoot it. It's like, I don't need to be in there for every single thing. If it's a scene of a guy in a bathroom on a phone on a toilet, like I don't see that as the poster unless it's about a guy in a bathroom on a toilet, then maybe it's the poster, but you just kind of have to pick and choose, when you're going to get in there and what you think will be the best image.
Is there like certain rules for you? Like you cannot, because I know certain actors and certain directors have, very, boundaries because they're in a zone. They're really focused on a scene. Is there certain times that you're like, all right, I just got to kind of wait till this is done to shoot and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think the trick is just kind of reading the room, you know? I certainly don't go in guns a-blazing on the first day, on the first take. If it's an actor I haven't worked with before, I kind of, like I said, read the room, feel them out, see what their process is, just kind of, feel what everybody's process is. And the first couple of days are really weird for everybody anyways, because they're just trying to find a rhythm as a crew and a cast. And there's some really difficult actors. There's definitely ones that I hope I never see again on a set. I can't name them because I know.
I wouldn't ask.
Yeah, but and directors, I mean, there's been a couple interesting directors, you know, that they just don't care what I'm doing, or they don't know why I'm there. So, you know, they'll give you a little beef here and there, but for the most part, you just show them a nice picture you took of them and they're like, oh, okay. You know, so, you know, but yeah, so it's really kind of just reading the room and seeing what everything's about before you kind of go in there and do your thing. You know?
Hey, thanks for watching part 1 of our interview with Matt Kennedy. We hope you enjoyed it. You can check out this and other episodes on our YouTube page, on all your favorite podcast locations. Just search for Tales from the Pit Photo, and at talesfromthepit.net. We'll see you next time.